Okay, people, so let's talk about functions. As I said in the previous video, function is just a set of commands that we can call again and again, right? So you're going to declare it similarly to the way you declare a variable. We're going to say, we don't say let as the keyword, we say function as the keyword now. Instead of like where there was a variable, it was var, let, or const, that's our keyword, right? Here, function is the keyword because we're not making a variable, we're making a function. Then we name our function. So this function we're going to make is going to be a set of instructions that is going to simply join two strings together. I think in a previous video we joined two strings together just manually, but here we're going to do it as a function that we can recall over and over. So we're going to call it join strings. Hey, how about that? So then that's the name of our function. So we had the keyword function, and then we named it. So far that looks a lot like doing the keyword for a variable and the name of the variable, or the one I'm pointing here is an array, but same principle. Difference here is now after the name you put a pair of brackets, and for now that's going to be empty, but later you're going to be able to put some stuff in there. I'll come back to that. So keyword function, name of the function with the parentheses, and then you're going to have a set of curly brackets, and the curly brackets are where the list of instructions go. Okay. So I mean it's going to be okay. Remember, let's talk about return value of a function. Remember I was saying when you just type, if I just type in over here a string A, it returns the letter A, right? The string A. Functions return things too, because really what's going on here, there's probably, when I'm just typing in this REPL and I say the string A, it's probably something like console.log. There's probably some built-in function that's returning, right? That might be confusing. Let me just do this. A function has to return something. It has to give something back. You give a, if you remember functions from Algebra 2, I think, at least in here in the United States, I think the way they have this class is you do functions in a class called Algebra 2, and basically a function is just, it's just a set of instructions. You put something in it, and something comes out of it. Could be the same thing, could be transformed in some way, but the point is that you put something in, something comes out the other side. If you put the same thing in another time over, it comes out. It's going to be the same thing every time. Okay. So what returning is the thing that's going to come out. So for our case, we're joining two strings, all right? Well, all right, so how do we know what two strings we're going to join? That's where the parentheses come in. So we're going to say 1 and 2. Now, this 1 and 2 could be, the word 1 and 2 there are not important. It could be Bob and Sally, and it would work the same way. They're basically like variables, okay? So they'll be more clear as I finish doing this example. So just for now, it's 1 and 2, and I'll show you what I mean that it could be anything in a minute. So we're going to turn, we're going to do this, I'm sure we did this in a previous video, I think. The backtick string for strings, right? And then we did to do a variable, you put it in curly brackets, so it's going to be 1 and 2. Okay. And then, so what do you think is going to happen here? Jumps over the lazy dog. Where's that coming from? Anybody know where that's coming from? That's coming from back here, saying list 1. Right? Because remember, 1 is the second item. So we want to get rid of that, actually. Or we'll just comment it out for now. So now what's this going to do? What should show up in our thing when we run this here? Undefined, right? Because Think about it. What do we have going on here? Remember we said this rep will return everything, it returns something. So this, we're just defining an object. It's not returning anything. Here we're defining an array. It's not returning anything. Here we're defining a function, or declaring a function, I guess is the proper terminology. And even though we told it to return this new string, there's a difference with functions. It doesn't just automatically return it. So here we're just defining what the function is going to do. We're never telling it to actually do it. Okay? To call a function, that's the word they use to, when you run a function, they say you're calling the function. To call the function, what you do, you use the name of the function. When you use the keyword function, you're defining it, you're declaring it, you're describing what the instructions are. When you do this, this is how you make it actually run. You just say the name of the function and use the parentheses with it. So if you see like a name and a parentheses, you know that's somebody's actually, you're trying to run a function. If you don't see these parentheses, or I should say if you see it with the keyword function, then you're only defining it. If you don't have this, if this part's not there, nothing's going to run. All right, you need this, the name of the function and the parentheses for turn. So what do you think is going to happen here if I just run this like this? Reference error. Join string is not defined. Ah, that's because I called it join strings. Let's see. Let's fix that and then see what happens. Undefined, undefined. All right, so think about why that would be. Why would that be? Why would that be, right? Because I told you these are like variables, right? You could think they call them arguments, okay? Well, I guess when you define it, they're called parameters, but when you run it, it's called arguments. Don't get caught up, tied up in that. Though. Anyway, it's just terminology. So I said it's like a variable, right? So here you're telling it what to expect. What you're saying here is you got the keyword function, join, it's named join strings, and it's expecting whatever you put in this parentheses here. This is like you're telling it, say, hey, I'm going to give you something here to go along with your function. I'm going to give you a piece of input. Remember I said a function has an input and an output? So here's where you tell it to describe what the input is. Right? So here, by separating it by commas, we're saying it's going to be two things. And then when you're running the function, you can refer to those things and use them in some way. Here, we use them, we're putting them together in one string. So it's expecting to get this variable. Remember, it's not technically called a variable, but let's think of it that way. We're using it, it's like a variable, right? We're taking the first variable and putting it here, taking the second variable and put it here. Now, when we run it, you have to tell it what those things are. Here, we're telling it to expect it. So when you run it in the parentheses, you have to give it what it's expecting to get. Here, we didn't give it anything. So if we wanted to join our two strings from, let's say, saying, well, first of all, do you remember how to get saying1? Do we just type saying1? No, there's a little trick to it, right? Remember, to get something out of an object, you say the object name and use the dot notation, right? And remember, like I said here, it's going to be separated by a comma. And you're saying dot saying2. Now, let's see what happens. There we go. Okay? So let's think about what happened here. We defined our function. The keyword function, right, to declare the function. We said it's going to be named join strings. It's going to expect two things to be given to it, number 1 and number 2. And then inside the curly brackets are the actual set of instructions. And the set of instructions are just to return or give me back, here's the output, here's what I want to output. Remember, these are the input, and then the curly bracket, inside the curly brackets is what the, well, not exactly, it's the set of instructions. The return is the output. 1 and 2 is input, return is the output. So the set of instructions are to return the string, the first thing and the second thing that we gave it. So then down here, remember we called it. Then we're calling it is when you have the name of it without the keyword, just the name of the function with a set of parentheses. So this can be tricky. You know, if I said how you can recognize that it's a function being called by the parentheses, and that's what's going on here. It has some stuff filled in it, but it's still just a function name and a set of parentheses, okay? And so the input is saying 1 and saying 2, and the output shows up over here. What next? So I was saying this, I remember this being confusing. Is this, do I have to call it 1 and 2? No, you don't. It could be, like I said, it could be Bob and Sally, and it should still work. Yep. So the names of them are not important here as long as they're consistent. If you, whatever I say the first parameter is, I need to use it here. So as long as it's consistent, you know, it's fine. In case you're wondering how I did that, if you select something, a lot of these text editors and this REPL here, you select something and you hit Command D or Control D, and you see it highlighted, the next one over here, automatically, okay? And if there were a third Sally somewhere here, it would do that one too, but there's only 2. How about this if I do Fox? How many times do I have Fox in here? If I hit Control D, see it selected this one and do it again. Oh, I only have 2 of those too. Anyway, if you do the Control D, it's going to select all of them in order, okay? All right, that's not important right now. Let's go back to number 1 and number 2, okay? So let's see. What are we going to talk about next here with functions? Oh, okay. So we talked about how to declare a function. Talked about the parameters. When you're declaring the function, they're called parameters. Here, when we called the function, we give it arguments. Okay, that's just technically they have a different name. Okay, but don't let that confuse you. Now, there's another way to save this function right here. I could say you're not saving it. That's a weird way of putting it, I guess, but you can think of it like you're saving this function by calling the function keyword. Instead of just saving it to the window here, you can save it into an object. Because an object, remember, can store, I think for my example we only did, you know, saying was a string. Saying 1 was a string. But if I was not clear about this, let's make it clear right now. An object can store different things. An object could store another object. It could store an array. It could store, let's say, for example, our let's see. Let's do this. Saying array is saying list. So let's see now, if I do, what happens? So how would I get that? Think about that. How do I get that saying list array? If I say saying dot, remember if we do an object, we do dot notation. Saying array, should that give us an array? Oop, reference error, saying list is not defined. Why is saying list not defined? Well, it's looking for it. It got it, right? It got saying dot saying array, but it doesn't know what saying list is. I wonder if this needs to be before here for that to work. It might just be I think that's in the order. Yeah. Just because when in the order, when this being below here, it's going down. Our little program here, or little script here, was just going down the line. But since this was defined after, it didn't know what it was yet. Okay, so now it found it, right? Okay. So now we're saying when you have the dot, remember that's you're dealing with an object, right? You're saying we're looking for our object called saying, which is this guy, and then the dot tells us the property that we're looking for inside there. We're looking for the saying array, and we said the saying array is actually this saying list. Our saying list we defined up here, which is an array, which has the quick brown fox, jumps over, and number 2 is jumps over lazing dog. So then we look for it here, return it, in fact returns the array, right? So all that to say that an object can store lots of different stuff. Here we had it's doing a string, here's doing a string, here's doing an array. Well, guess what? We can also store a function in there. When you're doing a function, you don't, the format goes like this. We're going to say join strings, and then you say function. But what you're going to do here is we're not going to name it. Like here we did the keyword function and then the name. Well, we got the name of it over here. So you're just going to say function. We can just copy this. Okay. Let's do a little something with the indentation there. Okay, so now we have a function saved in there. Just be careful. The syntax is a little different. Instead of over here when we just declare it outside, it's the function keyword, then the name of the function. Here we have the name of the function, then the function keyword, and it's unnamed, right? Well, it's named back here. This is what you call an anonymous function, because the way compared to this, it's not function name parameters, it's just function parameters. We're not giving it a name. This is equivalent to, let me not get carried. Let's just focus here. So here, just the name is over here now, okay? So now, let's say we want to call this function. Here's another little syntax thing. When you have a function saved inside an object, it gets a special name. It's called a method. Okay, it's still just a function. It doesn't change how it works. We're going to change how we call it a little bit, and it gets a new name. Okay. So how did we get other things out of an object? How are we going to get this thing out of here? Same way we did the other stuff, right? So let's get rid of some of this blank space here. Okay, so instead of saying array, we're trying to get something else out of this saying object. We're trying to get this function, right? Join strings. Let's do this. Well, what do you think happens if I do this? Just saying dot join strings. What do you think that's going to give me? Let's give it a shot. I'll show you. Function join strings. Okay. So what it's giving you here, and this way this REPL works, is going to give you the whole thing. But what that means is it's we're not running the function, because remember to call or run the function, it has to have the parentheses. We didn't give it the parentheses, so it's just giving us the definition. It's saying it's a function called join strings. I'm not running it. I'm just giving it back to you. You didn't tell me to run it. You didn't tell me parentheses. I'm not running it. I don't run it unless you give me parentheses. So if we want to run the function, it's just like we did here. Or I keep saying run the function, but it's really the terminology is called the function. Right? So just like we did with the regular function, when we use it as a method, we still need to give it in the parentheses. And now I'm going to run it. And there we go. Just the same way this ran, right? This one's running over here, even though we called it from the one that's inside here. So, long story short, objects can hold all kinds of stuff. They can hold strings, arrays, functions, other objects. They can store basically anything. A function is just a string of commands that we can reuse. Um, and then you can, if you store a function inside of an object, you refer to, we call it a method. And you access it the same way we accessed anything else that was on an object with the dot notation. Okay. Is there anything else I wanted to say about functions? No, I think that should do it. Okay, we'll see you in the next video.